Hello, everybody. Welcome to Archeo Viking and Happy Black History Month. As today is the last day of Black History Month, I wanted to go out on a bang. So I'm covering the most decorated marshal in the Old West, a figure who gets a lot of love from historians, but unfortunately hasn't gotten a lot of love by the general public until very recently, and even then only in a few cases. So the video today is Bass Reeves, the Old West's greatest lawman, and the story of how this most decorated marshal of the Old West inspired the Lone Ranger. Because yes, he is in fact the inspiration for the Lone Ranger. So, who was Bass Reeves? Well, as I said, Bass Reeves is the most decorated lawman in the Old West. We'll say roughly 1860s into the Civil War, 1865 until the early 1900s. Bass Reeves was a man who was born to a couple of enslaved Africans. He himself was an enslaved African, and they were owned by a man named William Reeves. And eventually he went on to become one of the best marshals in the Indian Territory of Oklahoma, which you see here. That consists of the so-called five civilized tribes: the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole, as well as various other Plains Indians who were put here, such as Osages and Cheyenne, Arapaho, etc. So, as I said, Bass Reeves was born in the 1840s as an enslaved African of the slave owner and plantation owner, William Reeves, who at the time lived in Crawford County, Arkansas. However, eventually, William Reeves took Bass and his family, who were still enslaved at the time, with him into Grayson County, Texas, where they lived, working on the plantation, obviously unwillingly, until the beginning of the Civil War that you see here. And like many enslaved Africans at the time, William Reeves forced the Reeves family, especially Bass Reeves, to come with him into the war as sort of servants and various other things. No lost causers. They were not Black Confederates. That's a myth. They were merely basically just like, oh, you cook this, or basically any other thing. They were still very much enslaved Africans. Just rather than being forced to pick cotton or tobacco or what have you, they were being forced to clean the army's tools. However, in 1863, with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln, Bass Reeves was emboldened to run away into Indian Territory, where he fell in with pro-Union American Indians, mostly Creek and Seminole, pro-Union Creek and Seminole, and he, in fact, may have actually fought under Apothiahola, who was leading the pro-Union Creek and Seminoles. After the war ended, he did go on to, for a short time, become a farmer. However, he didn't find farming much to his liking, so he, being well known for his tracking abilities as well as his skill with the rifle and pistol, even though he all his life said he was only fair in the use of it, despite what all of his colleagues said, as they often said that he was a crack shot with them. He was hired on to be a deputy marshal under the Fort Smith, Arkansas court, which was at the time led by Isaac Parker, the figure I mentioned in my Nate Christie video, who was known as a hanging judge. And during his tenure as a marshal under Isaac Parker, Bass Reeves, the figure on the left, actually went on to become as a renowned lawman, as the two lawmen and other lawmen as well, but these two lawmen specifically, Heck Thomas and Bill Tillman, who were very well known in the territory and very well liked and very skilled lawmen. One of the figures that Bass Reeves is most well known for capturing was a notorious outlaw named Bob Gozier. What makes Bob Gozier different than a lot of outlaws is, rather than falling to crime due to poverty or other things like that, Bob Gozier chose to go into crime, probably out of greed, just simply out of greed, and he terrorized Indian territory all over the place. And so eventually, in a similar gunfight that you see here, obviously this is not the gunfight in question, but in a similar gunfight you see here, Bass Reeves eventually hunted down and killed Bob Gozier. Now, it should be noted, by this time, Bass Reeves is already very well known for being very tenacious as a lawman, and basically anyone he set his mind to capturing, he would capture. So he was already very skilled and already on the level of Heck Thomas and Bill Tillman at this point in time. Now, he hadn't quite reached his arrest record that he would become famous for, but he was still very good at his job, and this is why he was able to catch this criminal who had eluded all other lawmen. And in fact, had even eluded Bass Reeves for a long time before Bass Reeves finally hunted him down and put an end to him. Unfortunately, Bass Reeves would be arrested and went to trial for the accidental killing of his posse's cook. Essentially, what all accounts in the trial said is he was cleaning his rifle. His rifle was bottom side up, facing towards the fire, and he was trying to get a bullet out. And a bullet came out. A bullet misfired as the cook was walking by. And it had been mentioned that they had had a slight argument over a dog. Bass Reeves was stating the dog had been dogging them. Sorry for the pun. Had been bothering them for days, and Bass Reeves just simply made the comment to the cook, "Hey, kill that damn dog," or something along those lines. And he was also complaining about the cook's cooking of beans at the time. But other than that, all accounts state that they were very friendly. Unfortunately, the misfire happened and killed the cook, and so Isaac Parker had him arrested. But fortunately, Bass Reeves was able to get a very well-known attorney at the time, W.H.H. Clayton, who represented Bass Reeves and defended him, and brought the wealth of evidence showing that Bass Reeves had only done this accidentally, and was able to acquit Bass Reeves. So it was after this trial, Bass Reeves began basically a hunting spree of criminals. Amongst them were the Tom Story gang, who were a gang of notorious horse thieves that Bass Reeves tracked down to Texas and eventually brought them all in. In fact, killed several of them in a gunfight. He also captured the notorious Seminole outlaw, as this article says, Greenleaf, somebody who had also eluded many lawmen. And then a figure whom I mentioned in my one of my videos that Bass Reeves had a minor connection to. He was maybe involved in some of the posses hunting Ned Christie. The reason I say maybe is the accounts say there's question by historians whether or not he actually was involved, because it's only said that he burnt down the house of Ned Christie while Ned Christie wasn't there. And then other accounts also mention, from yellow journalism, mentioned that Ned Christie killed Bass Reeves, which of course we know is false. So there's some debate of whether or not he was actually involved in it, but it does seem that he was at least involved in a posse burning down Ned Christie's house, though he did not capture or kill Ned Christie because Ned Christie was away. Unfortunately for Bass Reeves, in 1896, a Supreme Court ruling that you can see here, Plessy versus Ferguson, ruled that segregation was very much legal and constitutional. So it is said that after this ruling, Bass Reeves began to become less outspoken. He began to not take part in meetings amongst his fellow lawmen at Fort Smith as much as he had beforehand. It seems he sort of felt like that there was no point in it. And of course, as we know, that this ruling would affect U.S. Policy and U.S. culture well into the 1960s, and really even into today, even though segregation has ended in the 60s. As we know that there's still side effects of it. The biggest example of why Bass Reeves was such a well-known and well-respected lawman is this right here. This is Bass Reeves' son, Benny Reeves, whom Bass Reeves arrested for killing his wife. So essentially, what happened is Benny and Bass were very close, and at one point during a dinner, Benny recounted to his father that he had found his wife having an affair with another man, and had driven the man off, and then eventually taken his wife back. And he had asked his father what he would have done. And essentially, his father had said, "Well, I would have killed the man, and probably he's like, and thrown out my wife," or something like that, something along those lines. And so, because after this event, Benny found his wife with another man, and in a fit of jealousy, shot his wife and the man. He was really aiming for the man and accidentally shot the wife, as the court case would eventually find. But it still happened. And when Bass Reeves found out, he was the one who immediately took the wanted poster and went after his son, and brought him back in. And he seems to have been very shaken by this, because obviously when he said, kill the man and throw the wife out, he wasn't telling him to kill his wife. And as I said, all evidence points to that it was an accidental kill, that he was actually trying to kill the man his wife was having an affair with. But regardless, his son was eventually convicted and sent to prison. What is most interesting about this is he was such a model prisoner that after only 13 years of his 30-year sentence, he was acquitted and released. So apparently his father was such a good lawman, he had an effect on his son and how well his son behaved in prison. So that's something to take away. He was such a devoted lawman that he arrested his own son for murder, accidental or not, and his influence affected his son in prison. Eventually, unfortunately, again for Bass Reeves, Oklahoma would be accepted as a U.S. state. And thus, because of that, segregation was heavily applied to Oklahoma. It was also during this time that Bass Reeves was transferred from the Fort Smith District Court to the Muskogee District Court. And thus, along with that and the moving of Oklahoma from a territory to a state, Bass Reeves became no longer a marshal, but essentially a county policeman for Muskogee County, which he was by all accounts still very good at, and actually participated in his last gunfight in his tenure as a policeman for Muskogee Court, in which outlaws were in a house, and he and several other lawmen went and put them down. And eventually he would have to, in 1907, retire from being a policeman due to illness, and eventually would die. However, despite his misfortune later in life, both with Plessy versus Ferguson, having to arrest his son, and also no longer being a marshal and having to become essentially a county policeman, his legacy to this day lives on. One of them is this statue here that is, I believe, in Fort Smith, which is a statue of Bass Reeves. So he has a monument to his history still existing. But that's not the biggest monument to his history that exists. The most impactful. The most impactful monument to his history is the Lone Ranger. Now, I will fully admit that this is still highly up for debate whether or not the Lone Ranger is based on Bass Reeves, and not everyone agrees. However, something to keep in mind is the writer of the Lone Ranger's office. His office was beside the prison where most, if not all, of Bass Reeves' 3,000. He arrested a total of 3,000 criminals in his lifetime, which far outstrips what anyone else arrested. So most of those 3,000 were in the prison beside his office. And so he heard a lot of stories about Bass Reeves in his writing. And suddenly, after that, you have this figure who's this undaunted lawman with a American Indian sidekick, because obviously Bass Reeves worked with a lot of American Indian lawmen, and he rode a white horse. Something that Bass Reeves rode was a white horse. And the further biggest indicator is the fact that the Lone Ranger is wearing a black mask, because obviously the writer wasn't going to, during the 30s and such, wasn't going to make the main character black. So it makes the most sense to many historians, including myself, that this was done sort of as a code. So again, no way to fully prove this, but the evidence is pretty striking. I mean, the writer's office next to prison where most of Bass Reeves' criminals he arrested were. The Indian sidekick worked with Indian lawmen, rides a white horse for both of them, both unrelenting lawmen, and then the black mask. Pretty indicative that this was based off of Bass Reeves. And again, many historians agree. So this is his biggest legacy. The man who had the highest arrest record in all of the Old West, 3,000 criminals either arrested and 14 criminals killed, went on to inspire one of the most iconic, essentially predecessors to superheroes that we have. So with that ends my videos for Black History Month. I hope you liked the movie and thoroughly enjoyed it. Did you learn about this at all in your this figure at all in your any of your history classes, be it in Oklahoma or Texas or what have you? Did you see a documentary about it, or is this something completely new that you're learning about? Let me know in the comments. And with that, please like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you have a good day.